So here is our explosion image. As I mentioned previously, this explosion image is 100 pixels for wide and 100 pixels tall for each frame of the animation. So what I want you to do for the very last lab, which will be the homework, is I want you to draw a piece of this texture one at a time, but do it in succession. So you're going to draw a piece of it very quickly, one after another. And the idea is that you have this magic like rectangle here, which is going to represent our UV for the frame that we want to animate on. So I'm going to just make sure it has a. Let's see. I want no fill. Cancel. I don't want this. So this rectangle here, which represents our UV, is basically going to move from piece to piece of this texture. You're going to be moving this rectangle in your code. And the key is that you're going to start in the top left corner, you're going to move it all the way to the right, and then when it gets to the very far right, you're going to reset it like a typewriter all the way to the left again, but you're going to move it down one row. And the key is that this little rectangle is going to keep doing that. It's going to go through all the columns and reset, go through each one of the rows until it gets to the very end, reset. It's going to keep doing this through each of these sections of the texture until it gets to the very end, and then it's going to reset all the way up to the top again. So your job is to write code that essentially moves this rectangle here to each box, right? That's all the code that you need to write, and then your explosion will just magically animate. So the key, though, is that moving this rectangle from section to section, the kind of tricky part is you need to reset it back to the beginning. So I kind of want to show a little bit about what this is. Yeah. Show you an example here. Let me open up this solution here. So we're just going to first start off with drawing we're going to do a sprite, and we're going to call this explosion sprite. And this is straight from the example here. So when you have a sprite like this, you can draw a sprite once you loaded the texture for it. So it's basically taking this code here. So I'm going to take my explosion sprite, set texture, explosion texture, which I'm going to create up here. So I have a texture. I'm going to call it explosion texture. This is exactly how you're doing things. If explosion texture load from file, and it's again content.explosion.png. I'm going to go over printf stuff later, so this is going to be in the last class when we talk about this. If it failed to load, then do this, and we're going to return 0 here, because we can't run the rest of the program. Otherwise, we're going to set the texture to be the explosion texture here, and we're going to draw our explosion sprite, right? So this will draw the entirety of the explosion image. So there's all the full explosion, which we don't actually want. I'm going to make it black as well, so you guys can see the background. What I'm going to start you guys off with is how do you draw a piece of this? Just like how you draw a piece of Charizard, you can just say, hey, explosion sprite, set texture rectangle, and it's expecting an int rectangle. And I'm going to just start off with 0, 0, 100, 100, right? This will draw the top left image, which is just kind of like a white piece of the explosion. So see that tiny bit right there? What if I want to draw, say, this guy right here? So he's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns over and 1 row down. How do I get 4 columns over and 1 row down? Well, 4 columns over is used for X. I know each one is 100 pixels wide, so I can do that. 1 row down is that. It's just 1 row down times 100 pixels, which will get me that specific sprite out of it. So now I have that specific sprite. These numbers here, I'm going to pull them out to variables here. I'm going to call this one row. I'm going to set equal to 4. I'm going to call another one column. I'm going to set that equal to 1. I'm going to multiply this row by column here, like so. And I'm going to run this again. I just pulled that out into a variable. It's still row, sorry, this is row for column 1 now, so this is a different. So I actually did this wrong. This is actually going to be column and row here. This is actually column. Because remember, this is actually x. So this is where on x, so x goes from left to right. So this is going to be column 1, 2, 3, 4, and row 1. So I want row 1, column 4. That's what I want. Same image. And the key to animation, though, is to increase the column quickly. So my recommendation to you is make sure this rectangle that you're updating is inside of your loop down here. Okay? And then one trick, you can just try this, and this is pretty much what I'm going to show. If you just increase column by 1 every time you go through this loop, your column will just start at 0 or start at whatever you specify and then animate and then go away. So if I start this at 0, I just run. And remember, I'm adding 1 to column every frame. I'm going to get a very, very fast animation. And why is that moving so fast? Because remember, this loop is going as fast as it can. In addition, this column here starts at 0 and ends up at some really high number. So if I just let it run and then stop it right here, column right now, the value of column, let's see. This doesn't run. I'm going to let it run for a little bit and then stop it. Column is currently 2,696. So this number right here is trying to get the 2600th column of this animation, which is all the way over here, over in like Costa Mesa somewhere. It's not even in the same city. So that column needs to make sure that it gets moved back. Remember, you want to go to here, and you want to reset that thing back to here, right? That rectangle. Even if my recommendation is go here, and you reset it back to just the beginning again. Just reset it back over again, right? What's the easiest way to do that? You can write an if statement. If the column is greater than, let's say, greater than or equal to 9. How about this? It's kind of animating, it's spazzing out, but you get the idea, okay? So what I want you guys to do is properly animate it so that it really looks like a full explosion starting from the top left corner, going all the way to the bottom, and then restarting again, okay? So I just showed you guys how to set it up so that it'll reset within the same row, like this. Use the same idea. Also, you have to control the timing of this somehow. If you just let it run super fast, it's going to animate too quickly. Animations work by holding at the frame for a specific time. You don't want to just go through this as fast as you can. You actually want to let it sit on a specific frame for a little bit. So it's going to go to here, wait a little bit. Go to here, wait a little bit. Go to here. You can't just go like this constantly. It's going to actually look, it's going to look incorrect in a lot of cases because you don't have enough frames to cover it. You just need it to be fast enough. Usually it's about 30 frames a second. So you want to go through about 30 of these a second. And there happens to be 81 of these. So it should take what? 81 divided by 30? It should take 2.7 seconds to play the entire thing. Which means every single animation here will take about 0.16 seconds to animate. Okay. So if you want this thing to run, it's just 1 over 60, because we're running at 60, or sorry, 0.016. It's just 1 over 60 frames. You want to animate like this is how many frames you want to actually have go in a second. You can actually do this, you can actually multiply this by 2. You can adjust this rate here. I'm just giving you guys 0.016 to kind of get an idea for how many frames. I think locally I had it at even 0.1, like 0.1 seconds per each frame. You can change this to make it look or feel faster or slower. Change it to whatever you want it to be. Normally, a game runs at 60 frames a second, so you want it to be this many seconds per frame. If you want it to run at 30 frames per second, you can have it be, can you see that? 0.0333. That can be the time between each frame. All right, so that'll be for homework, is to finish this whole lab and to get this thing to animate if you haven't already. Okay. All right, so that's it for that.